Yeah, absolutely, no question about it. Whether it's a high sugar content food, if we look at, many people think that all fruits are problematic because of their sugar content, and many people are familiar with the glycemic index, but less familiar with the glycemic load. If we look at the glycemic load, which is more predictive of impact of a food on our blood sugar, it's not a measure of anything like that. It's a measure of, it basically looks at how quickly a substance lets go of its carbohydrates and multiplies that by the amount of sugar, the percentage of sugar. So it's the number of grams of sugar in 100 grams of the food. Well, most people would think that fruits would have a high glycemic load because they're sweet things. The truth is that most fruits, fresh fruits, have a low glycemic load. Low is 0 to 9 on the chart. And most fresh fruits are in the 4 to 6 or 7 range, with things that are very sweet like pineapples and mangoes being about 8 or 9, with 9 still being low, 10 to 19 being moderate, and 20 and above being high. Very sweet fruits like bananas, mame sapote, nispero, or sometimes called chico sapote or sapodilla, durian, jackfruit, egg fruit, also in the sapote family. These very sweet fruits are things that have a moderate glycemic load of 13 or 14. But what would surprise most people is that bread and pasta and a lot of other grains, and these things are high glycemic load foods, because even though they don't taste sweet at all, they're complex carbohydrates or starches, which when the body breaks them down, it breaks them down into simple sugars. But because most of these things have virtually no real fiber in them, that sugar that's created when you break them down goes directly to the bloodstream. Okay, it's the presence of two things, fiber and water, which slow down the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. And this is why, if we go to those medjool dates, they're really sweet, they're delicious, and people like them because they're sweet. They're so sweet because they're dried. They're allowed to dry on the palm tree before we eat them. If you've ever seen a fresh date, they're yellow or orange or red. They're not super juicy like a watermelon is, or even an orange, but they're not super dry. They're sort of like a slightly dry plum. They're still a bit juicy, and they're not wrinkled, crunchy, and they're not. Say again.
Kind of crunchy sometimes.
Can be a little bit, yeah, like a plum can be, but they're not super sweet because they still have all this water in them. I'm not sure what their water content is, but it's probably at least as much as a banana, which is 73, 74% water. The dates that you buy at the market, when we see these brown, wrinkled, very sweet things, these are in the 20 to 25% water content range. So by eliminating 2/3 or more of the water in the fruit, you have something that's much sweeter because the sugar becomes more concentrated. And when your body goes to process that, first of all, that dried food is taking water from your body. All dried foods do. Most people don't realize this, but stool, poop, is on average is 75% water. On average, okay? And when we eat things that are much lower than that in water, for instance, corn chips, which are 2% water, or 3%, when we eat corn chips, corn started out being high in water, but by the time it's processed in corn chips, it doesn't have much water in it. And so if you eat a whole bag of corn chips, it's taking water from your body. It's dehydrating you. Okay, almost everything that most people eat on a regular basis. Again, the average person probably eats, maybe a couple pieces of fruit per day, I would guess. That's probably the only, and the salads that they're eating, those are the only things that are high in water. Everything else is low in water, right? The meat, the animal products have had the water cooked out of them. Even most of the vegetables people eat have had the water cooked out of them. Bread starts with almost no water in it. Imagine crackers and things like that, which are completely dry, like the chips. And so people focus on eating things that are very, very low in water, and it's sucking the water out of the body. This is a serious problem for people. Nuts and seeds are typically very dry when they're eaten. They're going to take the water out of the body.